G'day everyone, I'm here with none other than Victor Liu, the winning coach of Liu Lift, who took out the top prize last year at the 2023 TCF Team Champs. I'm excited to have Victor on here. It's been a long time coming because Victor's had a rough start to the year, but I'm glad to finally have him on and talk about the Team Champs this year. How are you going, Victor?
Very good, sir. How are you going?
I'm going very good. We've obviously been chatting for like a good half an hour before we even hit record on this. It's been good to catch up, and yeah, genuinely, I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas about what's going to be obviously a really good comp in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, I'm absolutely keen for what's to come, and the roster this year has definitely been a lot more filled out than previous years, and there's nothing better than good competition when it comes towards any comp, and I think it really does push athletes to really achieving their best potential.
For sure, man. It's going to be so good. And I think everyone already knows it. Now, before anything, I kind of want to ask you a little bit about yourself. Like, most people would probably have a pretty fair idea of who you are: coach extraordinaire, lifting extraordinaire. Long time experienced powerlifter. But for those that might not be so clear, who's Victor and what is Liu Lift?
Okay, so I have been in the
Pump up your
sport of
business a little
powerlifting.
bit, and yeah, go on.
Yeah, I've been in the sport of powerlifting for this actually upcoming year is my 10th year in the sport, which is bloody crazy, considering that I still really vividly remember when I first started in powerlifting as a sub junior. I went to a comp at Obsidian, and this guy JP Couchy was actually the head ref at the competition and was absolutely blasting me for everything that I was doing. Fair to say though, because I was wearing non-IPF approved wraps and belt, but made my way through the comp with a 4 for 9 performance, just because I kept getting red lighted on like head coming off the bench press, pausing my squats just because I wasn't hitting depth. But yeah, like ever since then, just continued to trudge along as an athlete, which I am still an athlete to this day. But over the years, I actually started becoming a coach in 2016, and just very slowly built up my roster, my clientele towards where it is right now.
And so right now you're a full-time powerlifting coach. Is that your primary, I guess, job and role?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm a full-time powerlifting coach. I will count myself as a part-time psychology student. So that's something that I'm doing in the background for the last few years and for the next few years as well. So I do have aspirations of working as a psychologist, more so wanting to uh, branch in towards the performance dash um, sport area. But as I am continuing to coach, that is absolutely my main thing.
Right. And so you started Lou Lift, a few years ago, and you've started a mentorship this year. What does that mentorship look like, or what does that mean?
Yeah, so the mentorship is really my way of trying to put together everything that I've learned throughout the years and really try to upskill the coaches within our industry. I think one of the main things that I see with powerlifting coaching is that it really is like the Wild West. Anything goes, there's no rules governing it, and there's still no rules governing it. But what I want to do is provide the best, or at least from my standpoint, if I were to do my own mentorship, what I think is like the fundamental skills a powerlifting coach should have. And I've kind of distilled it into three main things. I've got the educator, which is really to teach the teaching role of the coach itself. I've got the tactician, which is the planning, the programming to think about like how we can navigate through obstacles. Of course, game day coaching, there's a lot of tactical sides of that. And then the supporter, which is being there for your clients and supporting them to really achieve their best, but also, I guess, providing the motivation for them, especially when they don't have that for themselves.
Dude, I freaking love that. I love having a really clear framework and a really clear like idea of how you want to or how you view coaching. You're clearly one of the top coaches going around. I would say one of the top coaches in Australia at the moment, and that was evidenced last year when Lou Lift took out the team champs in a pretty hot, contested event. Talk us a little bit through what last year was like. Who you had, very briefly, who was lifting last year, and what it was like to win, the biggest team event that is available in Australia, at least for now.
Yeah, so last year the team consisted of Kate, who is also part of the team this year. Jess, again, part of this team this year. And also Chris Yip, who is not part of the team, but he is bringing his own team this year as well, and Sean Pan. So last year, I think it was a really, really like good comp to be going in towards, because some of the athletes that were competing weren't super seasoned. Well, namely Kate, it was actually her first ever competition. But I remember leading up towards the competition, like a lot of people thought I put in like a fake sub. They didn't think like they didn't even know who she was, like because she hadn't competed before. They couldn't search her up, just because her full name is extremely long. It's probably like 2,000 characters. So yeah,
Typical
no one could
Greek
search
name,
her up,
hey.
and then she showed up and actually won her class, which was pretty cool. Jess was actually quite injured in the lead up towards that competition, so we were umming and ahhing about it whether it was worth pushing through. Which I was really proud of her tenacity in terms of being able to push through adversity, and to also, I guess, trust me to navigate through that situation. Because when you're experiencing like pretty severe pain, it can be really, really challenging, and often, and of course, it's really okay to do this. It's to just think about like, okay, maybe this isn't the best time for me to compete, but yeah, just stuck by it, and actually won her class as well, which was awesome. And for Chris was in a similar standpoint as Jess. Jess was quite physically, I guess, physically broken down, whereas Chris was probably not in the best mental spot leading up towards that competition. But in a similar sense, he actually did pull out a few weeks prior, but then ended up deciding to actually do compete about 3 weeks before, which is very close to the cutoff. But Chris being Chris, he can always pull off a fucking crazy performance. And lastly, with Sean. So Sean is a super, super young kid. I think at the time of when he competed, he was just 18, like freshly 18 years old. And he was going up against some pretty big dogs. So Cam Brown from Hustler and Suleiman from ESS. And I guess the strategy of what we employed going in is like, we knew that we would have a hard shot at coming first. But from a game day strategy standpoint, the way that we employed it was we should absolutely try and jostle for the best placing on our third attempts and allow the other two teams to battle for first. And therefore, we end up on second. So it will push someone down because they will always be battling for that first placing. So just essentially hit a total that secures us as a preliminary first. But then if they don't get that, then people aren't going to like, or at least I didn't think that they would fight for a second place. They'll be fighting for that first.
Right. It's like, last year was like it was such a competitive event, and obviously this year's going to be even more competitive. So I'm looking forward to kind of jumping into that. One thing that I think is being overlooked somewhat, all the talks about the lifters, but I think coaching experience is going to play a huge role in, what determines the placings and stuff this year. You're a master tactician when it comes to competition. You've learned from some of the best tacticians in the game. Competed at international, national level events, and so that kind of experience, you kind of got similar experience as I do. Kind of gives you a bit of a unique perspective. And so I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what not tricks. There's no tricks, but more so like how that experience is going to play out. Because I can't help but feel that some of these teams with slightly lesser experienced coaches might kind of fumble on the finish line and just kind of make bad decisions and yeah, I think it's going to come and bite them on the ass. You mentioned that two of the lifters you had lifting for you last year are back in again this year. So that is Kate and Jess. Who are the new lifters you got lifting for you this year? And I know you've made a couple of changes. This won't go out until Saturday, so you don't need to worry about secret information coming out. I'm not going to post this until then. But talk us through Frank and Evangeline.
Yeah, so Frank is someone I've been working with for about three or so years. He's someone who I think is such a great embodiment of what I want to bring out of Liu Lift. He's someone who is at the forefront, just the fucking nicest guy. I'm not sure whether I can swear about this, but he
Go
is
ahead.
that nice of a guy. But he's also someone who is just a consistently hard worker. He's someone who is able to consistently get the work in and to consistently put effort into his training. And by all means, like, he also does enjoy his life. He loves to travel. He loves to go out to eat nice food with his fiance. So he's someone who really has a great balance and knows when to double down and to dial in for, say, a big competition like Team Champs, or conversely, when we're like a little bit further out from competition, he does do things that he finds fulfilling, and that's something that I think is really valuable. And with Evangeline, so Evangeline is actually someone, I think she's been lifting in powerlifting for close to like 9 to 10 years. So
Yeah, she's
definitely,
about as experienced as you. Yeah.
yeah, she's definitely a veteran in the game. And I started coaching her about 3 or 4 years ago now. So she did take a break from powerlifting throughout COVID. And obviously, like most people, didn't get a chance to train throughout that. So I picked her up straight after that initial lockdown. And we've just been chipping away at just building her up. She's someone who is extremely busy with her work. She works as a dietitian at a hospital, whilst also having like a side hustle where she makes grazing boards, and she's someone who really has a lot of different things that she's going on within her life. She's, again, a really hard worker, which is, I guess, a value that I really respect quite a lot within her. And she's also someone who's incredibly strong. So yeah, real keen to see how she shows up on game day, and I guess to showcase to all of the newer lifters who Evangeline is, because I don't think many people would know of her. I heard that there were a lot of other coaches who were kind of just sussing out who, like, when I submitted a team, like, who's Evangeline? Like, no one really knew of her. And
Yeah.
hopefully this comeback will show to everyone who Evangeline is.
Well, I mean, she's an actual weapon of a lifter, and like you said, very experienced and has been around for a long time. And so, these new Instagram lifters, they don't know about the old veterans and how good they are, and how good they were, but also how good they are. I
We're
want to
just
ask
boomers
you,
these days. Can't believe it.
just boomers. I know. I mean, you and I
Say
are
we're in our
washed up.
20s and already boomers.
I'm washed up. I mentioned changes. Both Frank and Evangeline were nominated in the 82.5 kilo class, men and women respectively. What prompted the change? We're going to go into a bit of a preview in each of the classes in a minute, but what prompted the change? Was it purely tactical? Was it simply weight management and just not having to cut down? Talk us through some, in the mind of Master Coach Victor Liu.
So I was essentially just crunching out the numbers of all of the competitors and trying to like have like a preliminary scouting ranking. And when it came towards the 82.5 kilo class, that was a very stacked class in terms of the talent. So there, of course, is Jacob Shepis and also Josh Joyce, both of them actually having a really good and strong shot. And initially what we thought was that Frank would be battling out with Jacob, which I actually still think to this day he has a really good shot to battle out with Jacob. But Frank is also someone who really does well from sitting at a slightly heavier body weight. And I think when it came towards him trying to maximize the kilos from what he has, cutting back down towards 82 is something for which we don't know how it may impact his performance. Whereas if we just continue to go up and go into the 90 kilos class, which I think he has still just an equal amount of opportunity to actually be gunning for like a top spot, I think he should be doing so with the best chances to being successful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the 82.5 kilo class is just super stacked, like you said, especially with Josh and Jacob looking to be on the podium, and it would have obviously been Frank. And so, some people might say like moving to 90 kilo class to try to avoid competition. I kind of almost disagree, because that 90 kilo class is very strong also. I want to kind of ask you, and I will in a second, about the three teams that finished at the top last year. So yourself, Sim Strength, and Elemental. You've got Kate competing against Annabelle now in the 52 class after you saw the change the other day. And in the 90 kilo class, you got Demetrius. Mitz is a very strong 90 kilo lifter. So it's just going to be really hotly contested. There's no easy classes, was what I often say. Like, there are no easy wins. and every class is just going to be really hotly contested. Talk me through Evangeline briefly. So same thing, moved up a weight class.
Yeah, so same thing with Evangeline moving up a weight class. Essentially in a very similar position where we just didn't think it was worth cutting down. Evangeline is currently the strongest she's ever been, and I think with this kind of momentum that's backing her, we should really capitalize on that. Evangeline has been someone who hasn't competed in over a year. So given that this is her platform return, I really thought that for her to maximize her performance as much as she can, and for her to actually step onto the platform and feel proud of what she has done within training, cutting back down towards an 82.5 just didn't really seem to be worth it. But just going on to the point that you were saying about team champs being like quite a unique competition, I think it is like super unique because beyond just the game day strategy on the day of competition itself, there's this like extra level of strategy and competition that a coach needs to have to prepare their team beforehand. And we submit our athletes at the start or around like December, which gives like a general guideline of which weight class are more stacked, where there's is more people or more talent. And then athletes can be subbed in and out across the weight classes, or even like subbing athletes in and out up to 3 weeks out. So I guess this is like somewhat similar to Sheffield about how the main thing is to try and maximize your chances of success. And say Evie Kurigan last year, she cut down towards under 52s. And this year, Agata Sitko cutting down from 76s down to 69s, they maximize their chance of actually attaining a total that will be more successful than the other athletes. And I think that's quite similar towards team champs, where we should be setting up a team where we're setting up the team for success.
Right. I think like the main difference in Sheffield, obviously it being an individual thing, there's only so many strings you can pull, whereas with team champs, there's like another layer where each team can also make the swaps that they feel necessary. The other thing as well that a lot of you mentioned Sheffield, and one of the criticisms that people with no more than 3 brain cells kind of put together is that in Sheffield the scoring's unfair because someone can lift in a weaker weight class. And it's like, yes, of course, that 69 class was targeted by the 3 girls, Laia, Carola, and Agatha. But the beauty of it is it's self-organizing. It's kind of like it kind of like self-corrects over time. And
Well,
like
exactly. Next year, like
now this
how
weight,
hard is it going to be for them to get above that 100% of the total world record?
exactly right, it'll almost be
Instantly,
impossible.
within a year, it is fixed. So yeah, it's a bit silly.
And there will be a weaker class that will be targeted, and eventually, like over the next few years, what I see happening. It's kind of already like this in the men's side, a bit more even, but definitely in the women's side, like those weight classes will all eventually become equally as difficult. There will be no easy class, and this is kind of already happening with what's happening in the nominations in team champs. If you look at the nominations, there were some classes that were emptier. But for example, a 67.5 men's, Elemental put another guy in there. So now that weight class gets bumped up. You've pulled an 82.5 out of the deepest class and put him into the 90s. And so now the 90s have one more person, the 82.5 has one less person. And I would not be surprised to see a couple of more swaps out of the 82.5 class. And so I expect the final nominations. Of course, there'll be some classes that are just naturally emptier, like the end weight classes. But I think we're actually going to see a little bit more of an even distribution than it might have initially looked like on first nominations. You have these huge spikes and uneven distribution, but I think it's self-organizing because there is an incentive to move lifters to the emptier classes, and so that will actually create a much more even competition throughout the day.
Yeah,
Or the
yeah,
weekend.
and I guess like when it comes towards switching weight classes, one of the things that can be useful to see is like actually looking at the athletes and looking at their face structure and like, wow, this guy's looking fucking lean. Like he doesn't look like he's going to be competing in this class. Like when I was looking at Tony Newen initially, he's actually not doing team champs now, but my whole thought was like he's competing at under 90s. Like his face is so shredded. And I actually got out a photo of Tony now and Tony at Team Champs last year where it was 97 kilos. I'm like, this guy's face is like way more lean. So yeah, I guess like that's something that actually was happening in Sheffield where people were looking at Evie and was like, wait, she's just looking too lean to be 56s or 57s.
Right, just but Tony just has the most chisel jawline of all time. Like he's literally
Yeah,
a Giga Chad.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
he's on the wrong team. That's a problem. Now we've talked a little bit about Frank and Evangeline. Talk us through the other two. So Kat and Jess. You mentioned Kat lifted last year and won her class. It was looking like she was going to be the only lifter in the 52s, but we've had a late swap in Annabelle de Cruz. What's Kat's training looking like, and how do you kind of see her faring in that class?
Yeah, so Annabelle is an incredible lifter. She is someone who has been in the game for like such a long time, as well. So the experience that Kate has will not be greater than Annabelle. But I think what Kate can actually bring into the competition is she thrives under chaos and she thrives under pressure. She's a performer. A perfect example is that last year at the USAPL Nationals, her third squat was timed out towards the 1 second. So she got the re-rack call. I don't recall exactly what it was for, but then she literally had 10 seconds or around 8 seconds left on the clock when she re-racked. So she had to kind of immediately bring it back.
Right.
And yeah, like she made the squat within that 1 second, got the squat command, and I think it was like the best squat that she's ever done up to that date. So she's someone who I think can really do well under that pressure that Annabelle's probably going to be bringing onto the table. And I really look forward to seeing the battle out with them too.
Yeah, I mean, like not super experienced, like you said, but I mean that kind of composure to be able to walk out a squat twice with 1 second on the clock, lock your legs, stand up straight, and get the squat command. A lot of people kind of crumble in that situation. So it sounds like she's a bit of a fighter and got the kind of got that right mindset about on how to kind of perform. Now, Jess, I saw she benched 100 kilos the other day, so that's no secret. She's looking like she's in good form, and she's in a much deeper class, like 60 kilo class, one of the strongest fields. How do you kind of see her day faring, and who do you kind of see as her harshest competitor?
Her harshest competitor would absolutely be Constance or Deuce. Deuce is looking crazy strong at the moment, so I think it would be a pretty good battle out between them two. Just based upon, I guess, preliminary totals or just scouting, I think Deuce may have the upper hand when it
Might be the
comes.
favorite, yeah.
Yeah,
Fair to say.
might be the favorite for the class. But Jess is also someone who I think can really surprise us in terms of like how much she can actually push. She's someone who I think has so much untapped potential, and if she has that right mindset, I kind of like see her going Super Saiyan on the platform, where she can just unlock this inner level and just bring out kilos that wasn't really showcasing itself in training. She's someone who can do so much more in competition, like say for her squat and deadlift versus what she can do in her training. So we'll just see how things go and just make sure that we put ourselves in the best position as possible and hopefully edge out the competition.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, I think it's fair to say that Deuce is the favorite in that session. But I think it's also, Jess isn't so far behind that, one missed lift here or there can make the difference. If it's and what I often say when you've got a lifter like Jess who's coming to that class feeling a bit like, oh shit, I'm a bit behind the pace. What can I do? And it's easy to get desperate and like look for solutions. My approach is always just make your lifts. Because if the
100%.
door, and just be ready in case the door opens. If the door doesn't open, there's nothing you can do. If Deuce goes 9 out of 9, there's nothing you can do about that. But I will say, if Jess goes 3 out of 3 on squats and then Deuce misses a squat, you go, okay, we're in for a chance here. And then Jess gets 3 out of 3 bench and Deuce gets 2 out of 3 bench. And you're like, okay, the door's open now. And let's see if we can kind of stroll right in. You referenced the 90 kilo class last year with Sean Pan, and that's exactly what happened with Cam Brown. He went 2 out of 3 on squats, he went 2 out of 3 on bench, and then he went 2 out of 3 on deadlifts. And the favorite ended up finishing, I think, third or fourth, and maybe third. Greg finished in fourth, our guy, Greg Vela. And so the opportunity is always there. And like, when the pressure's on and the lights are on and the crowds are screaming, you just never know what can happen. And I think that's what we all love about sport, right? There's a level of chaos and unpredictability.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think both you and I really do agree with the point that confidence I think as a skill itself is something that should absolutely be instilled within athletes, because on the platform where it really does matter, that's where that confidence really can shine through.
For sure. And I think that it comes through experience and through positive experiences, like consistent success, always making lifts. That's a whole kind of conversation for another topic. I wanted to ask you, last year, obviously it was I don't want to overuse the term hotly contested, but it was a fierce battle. Yourself, Sim Strength, Elemental top three. It was a really, really good event with some really good lifters, and it was tight for the most day, but it was always looking like Liu Lift towards the end. This year, much deeper field. 22 teams instead of 13. We only had 13 last year, so it's almost double. How do you think that's going to affect the standings? How do you think that's going to affect the placings? How do you think it's going to affect the competition? Draw me a bit of a comparison as to what last year was like and what you expect this year to be like.
Okay, so obviously this year we'll have many more teams competing at team champs. I think that in itself, more teams will mean that there's more competition, which I only see as like a massive positive. I think that in terms of the teams that will be quite hotly contested, there's going to be more teams up there battling out. In my scouting, I think there's going to be 5 teams that will be battling out for their first spot. And in my opinion, I think if any team can get 3 wins, they will have that highest likelihood to win the entire competition. Panthers actually has 3 athletes in empty classes. So they have this default 3 win at the start, but their 4th lifter is in the most stacked weight class, or I guess the most talented weight class, which is the under 100s, which means that he has a lot to kind of climb up. But if that lifter ranks anything above 5th, then I think Panthers may actually take that win. Conversely, if that Panthers doesn't take the win over there, I think most realistically, the battle for podium will be for 20 points or equaling 2 first and 2 second. And therefore, it will be a battle out for the dots. The Chads have a really good shot of scoring 20 points, but they also have the disadvantage of lifting the day prior. So athletes actually have a very specific number to know what to beat going on to the Sunday. So it will be pretty interesting. I think it will be like really hotly contested, and I genuinely cannot tell you if I had to, like, what will be the rankings, because I think it is going to be quite close.
Yeah, you kind of referenced like how many points you might need to win. Last year, you guys won with 22 or 23, including the volunteer point. So 2 wins in 2 seconds. This year, I think you're just not going to need as many points to win, simply because the more teams are stealing points off each other. Last year, like, you needed to get 2 or 3 wins to win. This year, I think you can win even with 20 points or 21 points instead of the 23 that you had last year, just because it's just be so hard to take wins in every class. You referenced, the Panthers powerlifting. They've got a lift under 56, like you said, which is 6 points there, assuming they score a total. In the 100 kilo class, they've got a tough fight, but and that is one of the most hotly contested classes. I think what's going to happen, my personal opinion, or not personal opinion, but like what I kind of foresee shadowing. You referenced Sheffield earlier, and for those that didn't pay attention, Sheffield was this big competition that happened. SPD hosted this event last week. If you didn't see it, it was an IPF event. It was freaking awesome.
I think everyone who would be watching this podcast would have watched Sheffield.
That's a good point. But you just got to cross your T's, and dot your T's, whatever it is. We might have some fans that just aren't paying attention to Sheffield. But what happened in that, it was that Gustav Hedlund won in the men's, which was very out of left field. A lot of people didn't see that coming, and one of the favorites, Jesus, finished 11th.
And that's where that door opened, where he missed the bench. 2 benches, made too aggressive of a jump, and missed it on his second, and on the third he re-racked it because he got too G'd up, and for his deadlift, just an executional error. So just that's where, like, when opportunities come, we need to fucking jump on him. And we can't hope for opportunities. Like, that's something that is out of our control, but
they have to be there ready.
That's sport.
And that's the thing, is like, even just using the Jesus example, one thing I've said a few times this week is Jesus lost Sheffield on 1 attempt. That last bench cost him the whole day, because now he needed to deadlift 20 kilos more. And if he needed to deadlift 20 kilos less, it would have been a lot easier.
You would know all about that with the Gibbs versus Hack battle.
Right. And that was exactly the same thing when Gibbs jumped that 13. It was like, that's what he needed that 13 on. Same thing happened on his squat. He cost kilos there, and he would have made deadlift a lot easier. But I guess the reason that I bring up the Hedlund result at Sheffield is that I can't help but feel there's going to be a lot of, like, maybe someone that's a little bit left of field kind of sneaks in and takes the win because everyone else is focusing on each other. And maybe someone that's outside that top 5 that you kind of named actually can sneak in because someone stumbles here or there's an event here, or you end up overreaching. Exactly like Jesus was one of the favorites, but finished 11th. It's not because he was the 11th best lifter there. It was because one mistake means that you've got to overreach and then you just end up falling even further behind. I can't help but feel like something similar like that's going to happen. Like maybe one of the lifters is, let's say in the premier bracket, he's going, oh, I need to hit this total because someone from yesterday hit that total. And so they stretch a little bit more on squat and they miss a third squat. And then trying to make up ground, they stretch on the bench and they miss a bench. And all of a sudden they should have finished second in their class, but now they finished fifth. And that just completely flips the whole day on its head. So I really think that's something kind of not random, but I think something a little bit more chaotic is going to happen than what we're all expecting.
For sure. And that's why I can't even give you a prediction. I know you were asking the other coaches, like, well, who do you think the ranking is going to be? And like, I genuinely don't think I can give you something definitive because I think it's going to be so hotly contested. And there's going to be 5 teams that are going to very, very likely actually get that win.
For sure. I mean, I know you say you can't give us a prediction, but just to put it on record, you've got to name one. You've got to name one team. Who do you foresee as being the team that takes out the whole thing after the last deadlift hits the ground on Sunday?
I would definitely be doing my athletes a disservice if I don't say Liu Lift.
And who's coming in second behind Liu Lift then?
Everyone else.
Okay, that's a very diplomatic answer, and I think a very respectful answer. I mean, Liu Lift, clearly you are one of the favorites. You won last year, but it is going to be very tough. A lot of your lifters are in the deeper classes, especially like we described, in the 90 kilo class there for Frank and Jess fighting it with Constance. But those are the types of battles I think that are going to really shape the day because, I talk about like a 4-point turnaround, like let's say Constance and Jess in their session. If Constant wins, yes, they get 6 and, let's say Jess comes second, that's 4. But the other way around is actually a 4-point flip. It's a 4-point flip, you versus strength culture, like Constance would lose 2 points and then you would gain 2 points. So it's actually a 4-point turnaround. And I think a couple of those 4-point turnarounds here and there, or even 3 or 4-point turnarounds, or 5-point turnarounds are going to really like shape the day and really like basically carve out who's going to win the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure.
You go.
Yeah. So I really liked how, in terms of when you actually made the point system, first is 6, second is 4, because that actually allows that actual tactical benefit of actually winning, because you gain 2 points and then every subsequent.
Yeah, like you're further incentivized to go for the win. Yeah, that win is worth even more than like the difference between, like you said, first and second is more than the difference between second and third.
And that's where I guess you can. I think teams should really rely on this. It might be like this big key that I am just spitting out, but I think knowledge in itself is just so helpful as it just increases level of competition. But teams should really understand that people will be jostling for first place. So using the strategy that Sean and I employed last year of just hoping other people battle out, I think many people can sneak into that second spot.
For sure. Excellent, dude. Look, it's been really good to chat to you, kind of like hear what you had to say, your experience from last year, like you described just then about Sean. The team that you got coming in is super strong, and you're going to be stealing some points from other teams and also constructing a really good total yourselves. So, yeah, we're super excited to have Liu Lift at Team Champs this year, 2024. It's going to be the biggest one yet. And yeah, just thanking you for your time, Victor, and wishing you the best of luck with the rest of your training for your team.
My pleasure, my man. Thank you for giving me this platform to speak about the team and about this awesome comp that's about to happen.